Content creation and sharing among older adult bloggers, presented by Robin Brewer.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Robin, and I did this work in collaboration with my advisor, Anne-Marie Piper, at Northwestern University. And I will be presenting about this very unique case of online content and creation and sharing among older adults who are blogging. So when looking at recent reports of older adults online who we are defining as people over the age of 65, a lot of work focuses on the growth of seniors using social networking sites. So while they are indeed the fastest growing age group using sites like Facebook and Twitter, only 35% of older adults have accounts on these sites. Yet research continues to suggest that they are often lurking on these sites. And a lurker is just someone who rarely shares but often consumes information. And you may think that seniors are lurkers because they don't know how to share, or maybe they're not interested in the content, but prior research describes how seniors may lurk on social networking sites simply because they have different goals and values for connecting online. Younger adults tend to use social media to keep in touch with family members and friends and to meet new people, but more importantly, research shows that younger adults are more likely to express themselves on social networking sites. Some studies have shown how older adults are less likely to contribute on social networking sites because they see it as superficial. It doesn't help them really develop emotionally fulfilling relationships. And because of this perception of social networking sites, researchers have taken an interest and have started to develop prototypes like Sparks and Satoke and Wave, which were developed to make social networking sites more meaningful for seniors by focusing on online engagement with family members and existing social contacts. And this move towards engagement online is great because research has shown that there are many benefits to online engagement, particularly for seniors. So prior work has looked at online engagement and shows that it can be associated with positive health outcomes like a decrease in depression and can promote healthy aging. Creative forms of expression are associated with reduced loneliness and increased morale for older adults. Other work like Rogers' research on how seniors creatively engage offline and inventing prototypes with the Makey Makey toolkit show how creative forms of engagement were positive, empowering, and reflective experiences. And so one type of online engagement which has been shown to provide benefits to other populations is blogging. So for people with a desire to lose weight, or people with cancer, or people with chronic diseases, blogging provides a supportive community of like-minded peers. And because bloggers decide how they want to express themselves, blogging provides a sense of empowerment as people feel like they have more control over what narrative they share with others online. Therefore, we set out to learn if seniors were blogging, and if they were, how were they engaging online through blogging? So blogging is important as one form of online engagement, but at a higher level, we embarked on this case study to learn about online content and creation and sharing by seniors and how technology is appropriated to address needs of sharing, disclosure, and community. Therefore, our research questions were why and how do seniors blog, and what does this practice afford for people in older adulthood? So to answer these questions, I conducted semi-structured interviews with senior bloggers. I asked participants about their technology and social media use, the topics they blog about, their process for creating and sharing blog posts, why they chose to start blogging and continue to blog, and any challenges that they encounter while blogging. All interviews were transcribed, and we use a grounded theory-like approach to iteratively develop themes from the content of the transcripts. And so to compile the list of bloggers to recruit from, I did a basic search for older adult bloggers using Google, and through snowball sampling on the blog roles of these blogs, I compiled a list of 110 public blogs. And I only included blogs on this list that were written in English, had one author, and had indicated somewhere on their profile or within the blog post themselves that they were over the age of 65 years old. And I also only included people who had posted at least once between January and August 2015 because I was interested in active online content creation. So out of that 110, I was able to interview 20 bloggers. Their average age was 73 years old, and 18 of them were women. And this is a limitation of the study, as men may blog differently, but while women do outnumber men in general as people age, and are a majority of the contributors online, women may also be more active bloggers because prior work had suggested that they may have a higher need for self-disclosure than men. So these bloggers have been blogging anywhere between 1 to 15 years, with 5 of them actually blogging for more than 10 years. Many of them did use social networking sites along with the blogging platforms, and as you may expect, Facebook was used primarily to keep in touch with family members. And it was interesting to learn how many used Twitter, but after speaking to them further, they used Twitter primarily for advertising their blog posts and sharing their posts with others. So from our analysis, we identified 4 main themes for how and why seniors blog. Namely, blogging helps them to develop their identities. It fosters self-expression that supports their values. It provides a meaningful source of engagement during retirement years, and is a very important online space for community and this social interaction. So I'll describe a few bits and pieces of these themes, but encourage you to read the paper for more details. We saw that seniors develop their identity through blogging. Almost all participants posted about the experience of aging on their blogs because they wanted to be a voice for the true experience of aging, which is something that is often negatively framed in the media as something to avoid. Several participants described how they use blogging to cope with changes in their identities, like a change in job function or family structure. For example, Nancy described how blogging helped her when transitioning from pre to post-retirement. And similar to how we may identify ourselves as graduate students or professors or researchers, she had always identified herself by her job. So after she retired, she questioned, well, what am I going to say that I am? And by writing about this on her blog, she was able to get positive feedback and support from others. And so people explained how they followed other blogs that also tell it like it really is for aging, providing a comforting and real narrative to something that they are experiencing. Also, these seniors describe being true to their offline identities, but that sometimes their online blogging identity may be a bit exaggerated. So while it's true that the imagined audience caused some people to self-censor their posts because they weren't sure who would be reading them, other seniors chose to exaggerate their offline features online, particularly through humor or sarcasm. So one participant used satire in his blog and described his online persona as being a heavy drinker and a womanizer, whereas in real life, he's happily married and rarely drinks. So he described doing this out of enjoyment and for a source of entertainment, but as other literature on anonymity online shows, writing with the username allowed these seniors to distance certain features of their online identities from their offline identities. However, it's important to note that this person and others who did exaggerate certain features online, they said that their posts are still inherently true to their offline morals. So blogging also fosters self-expression that supports seniors' values of depth of thought and separation of audience. The people I interviewed saw blogging platforms as a space for serious, meaningful expression because they could speak at length on topics that they thought were important. So this was often contrasted to social networking sites like Facebook, which they saw as being primarily used for short family updates or for sharing family photos. For example, Sue said that she uses her blog to go more in depth than anything that she would put on Facebook. And so these seniors enjoyed being able to separate their audience from people that they were friends with on social networking sites. Just about all of the participants knew that their younger family members and friends didn't read their blog posts, mainly because they use other forms of lightweight social media. And they also knew that their younger family members were too lazy to read long posts, so they took advantage of this and used their blogs as a way to communicate topics that they thought would be of interest to other seniors. For participants who had multiple blogs, they carefully chose which topics would appear on each blog to keep in line with specific themes. So rarely, if ever, using the same blog for multiple themes. And because they weren't necessarily being judged or looked at by family members online, these seniors described their blogs as a safe space for expressing opinions on taboo topics like politics or senior-specific topics like transitioning to becoming a grandparent. So Norma, who has a political blog, says that one difference between her online and her offline self is that she isn't quite so political offline because she was taught not to discuss money, politics, and religion growing up. So blogging was seen as a platform that would allow her to express her opinions on topics that she valued. Blogging is also a meaningful way that these seniors engage online post-retirement. So transitioning into new family structures and reaching retirement provided a new meaning in their offline lives, and blogging helped them to share that meaning with others. For most of these seniors, the time and effort spent on maintaining and publishing their blog is valuable for themselves to help them reflect on the content of their posts. It also helps to provide a sense of structure and routine each day, and because of this routine, it gave people something to look forward to. For example, Wanda said, "It has become more or less my job. Even though I do not make money on it, I spend 3 or 4 hours a day on it, so it has given me a focus for my time." However, for some, the time dedicated to creating blog posts and researching statistics to make sure their posts were accurate could be a bit of a burden. Many of these seniors blog 3 or more times a week, with a majority of them blogging every day. And if you think about how long these seniors have been blogging, about an average of 7 years, you could imagine how this could be a bit time-consuming. But although it was time-consuming, blogging was still described as meaningful because these bloggers saw their posts as artifacts, as something that would be useful for others. They saw their blogs as being meaningful for other older adults who were reflecting on the process of aging, and they also saw it as important for future generations. For example, Teresa said that her blog posts would help tell her great-grandkids what she was like and what her thoughts were, in contrast to more formal archives, which are more descriptive rather than reflective. More importantly, the process of blogging provides a supportive community for these seniors who may feel isolated or lonely. Some expressed that their family members had moved away or that their friends had passed away, and so they were seeking new ways to reach out for support. They described how they may travel to meet other bloggers who they became friends with by commenting on their blog posts. They may travel to meet them for vacations or even for blogging conferences. Some described how their blogging network was somewhat better than their local support network. For example, Evelyn says that blogging about feeling lonely or upset made her feel like she's with friends. And in contrast to prior work, which suggests that seniors aren't interested in meeting new people on social networking sites, these interviews showed how these bloggers were expanding their social networks by connecting with peers online, often forming meaningful online and offline relationships. Because of the strength of the blogging community, blog posts are also used as an awareness tool. So if Teresa said if she doesn't post, a friend will reach out to see if she's okay, but that this can turn into an obligation to post. Yet despite this burden that people can sometimes feel while blogging, everyone said it was a positive experience, particularly because of the feedback that they get from other readers, which motivates them to continue blogging. Showing how an audience is very important. And while forming relationships through blogging isn't new, the depth of these relationships and the intentionality of forming these relationships is what makes blogging appealing as a place for online engagement and sharing for older adults. And so we provide insight into how these seniors create and share content online, and based on that, we recommend supporting complex evolving identities in online systems for seniors, even if these identities are portrayed in separate spaces, such as how people had different blogs for different themes. And designing for such identities, evolving identities, may transfer to other populations like teenagers. Next, the process of reflecting on posts helped these seniors archive this moment of change in their life for future audiences. And we learned what was meaningful for users offline, in this case, developing these rich heirlooms to pass down to family members, was very important, and how this may translate well to other online spaces, such as how it worked in this case for blogging. Apart from digital artifacts, systems should support communication processes that seniors value. And we learned that lightweight social networking sites may be seen as superficial because they don't support iteration, reflection, or revision as well as these blogging platforms do. They promote that thought and depth of expression, and incorporating aspects into social networking sites might look like allowing people to save drafts of their posts, or making features like editing posts on social networking sites more visible. And these are low-cost changes that can be made but may support values of older adults. And lastly, we saw blogging for seniors as a way to foster interactions with new social groups. And so while their readers were initially weak ties, they were able to strengthen these ties by creating content that their readers could reflect on. And so overall, our case study of older adults who actively engage online in content creation and sharing stands in stark contrast to current views of older adults as lurkers and passive members of online social communities. Therefore, we extend prior work and highlight designing for late life development as a productive framing for creating new technologies to empower seniors. So, thank you.
Hi, thanks so much for this work. It's very personally relevant to me because my dad started blogging after he retired. And my question was, you talked a little bit about social media versus blogs. And one question I had was, how do people get a following onto their blogs, especially since they started blogging later in life? Did you feel they were maybe leveraging social media for that, or was this a challenge at all?
Yes, that did come up in the interviews. I asked participants, like, how did you get started blogging? How did you get followers? And a lot of times it transitioned from them reading other senior blogs, commenting on those blogs, and then realizing that they had something that they wanted to share as well. So they already had this community of other bloggers whose blogs they had already read, and could reach out to them to say, like, oh, I have this new blog, would you like to check it out? But it turns out they tried using Facebook and Twitter to really advertise their posts to their family members, but when reaching out to their family members, they realized that they weren't really reading their blog posts, so they really relied on this other community of other seniors who were blogging.
Hey, Robin.
Hey, Omid.
Omid, Facebook. I had a really similar question. That's actually pretty funny. But I was more curious about the audience sizes. So no matter however people got involved with these bloggers, did you notice any effects in terms of how many readers each one of these bloggers had through your interviews?
So I did a bit. It was interesting because people would say that they were looking at who was reading their blog posts through like Google Analytics, or WordPress has their own statistics that they could see how many people were reading their posts. And it turned out to be a lot more than I expected. While I didn't go in and actually like look at to see how many readers that they had, I would ask them, how do you know who's reading your site? How many people would you say read your post or follow your blog? And it turned out to be more than what I was expecting. So one person in particular, she's actually like a super senior in this space. She will have thousands of people that come to read her blogs every day, her posts each day, and she'll have 30 to 40 comments on the post. Comments was one part of the post that I could actually look at, go to their blogs and see to get an idea of how many people were reading, but people would have, I would say, at least 10 to 30 comments on average on their posts, which was more than what I was expecting.